Okay, let's get into it. So good afternoon. Welcome to 25 Minutes with Cap, where each month we discuss recent trends in the specialty insurance space. My name's Adam Sills, and I run our specialty insurance business here at CapSpecialty. My guest today is the hard market. I don't think it's ridiculous to say that in the last few years, the hard market's become one of the most important voices in specialty insurance. From ridiculous memes poking fun at corporate cultures to now being a central clearinghouse for all things pay and healthcare equity. So how did it start? How did it become a phenomenon? And where is it going? As we go on from here, if you have questions through the session, feel free to enter them into the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. I already see that we have a question. And just a reminder, the content of this webinar is the property of CapSpecialty and is for informational purposes only. You're not permitted to republish, share, or quote from this webinar without the prior written consent of CapSpecialty, which can be obtained by contacting marketing@capspecialty.com. Just finally, our guest is using a voice decoder so they can continue to be anonymous. Let's not hold it against them. It does happen to sound a bit like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
It does.
You said the other day you'd gotten into this on a random late night. There have been
Yes.
a few of these other sites that have started. When did you realize this was taking off?
It was overnight. I started it one night when I was kind of drunk, and I made I made like probably 10 or 15 memes. And I think I tagged like a few offices in New York. Like I tagged like Willis and Aon and just sort of, so I had one follower who was a friend of mine and did not know who I was. And he was my only follower for 6 months. Nobody followed it. No one cared. The memes weren't very good. And then we all got sent home for COVID around that time in early 20. And then around that time, I think the merger between Aon and Willis was announced. And I made a Simpsons meme with Ralph on the bus. And he, Willis employees, and he was saying, I'm in danger. And whoever the follower was sent it to his friends, and then it became 70. And then the next morning it was like 700. And then by the next week it was, over 1,000. And it's just gone from there. So I knew I had something pretty quick, and it was really scary at first because I just thought, oh, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get in trouble.
So you have 30,000 people now.
Yeah.
Has it just been a continuous build, or
Yes.
did it really start to go with the pay stuff around review time?
It's been a continuous build. And it can, if there's nothing going on, or you're, not inspired by anything, you won't really have many follows and you won't post anything. It took a big leap during the pay stuff. I feel like that I got about 5,000 out of that. So that that was a jump forward, but for the most part, it's like 1,000 a month, give or take. Some people, drop off, some jump on, but it's about 1,000 a month or so.
So talk a little bit about the pay stuff, because you were going, you were doing funny stuff. People were following it, and then you ended up doing this turn, and
Yes.
it started to make news.
Yeah. So somebody, about when I had like a couple thousand followers, somebody turned me on to the investment banking world, and they have a couple of guys who do meme sites there, and they're insane. Those guys have 500,000 followers. I don't think they actually work in banking anymore, and they have a fairly comprehensive thing where they send out a Google Doc, and they tell you, people fill it out. It's incredibly detailed, and they publish what banks are paying what and how many hours they're working, and they expose a lot of the working conditions. I thought it was great, and I thought, I don't know how to use a Google Doc. I'll get to that. I'm not prepared to do it that well. So I just kind of on a hunch, I knew it was pay review season, and I just posted a story saying, tell me what your raise and your bonus was. Now I thought that I would get, some replies, and I'd post it, and I didn't know how interesting it would be to people, and then it just tumbled. 5 people responded, 700 people responded in a day or two. And then I think over the course of the week and a half, it was over 7,000 people responded with something, whether
I
it be
didn't
to
keep
tell
track of 7,000 people
you don't,
responses.
I mean, Instagram is not set up for that. Like it's they age off and you have to just delete them, and you hope you see the ones people you interact with more will kind of pop up before, but there's no way to search them or do anything. They just it gets buried. And so sometimes people, like, I'll respond to them, and then there's other people that I'll never respond to because I don't see it. And remember, a lot of times they're not really responding, they're just sending you like a smiley face or something, so you don't see every,
Right.
not all of it is material. But I just published what was good, and then as you publish more comes in. Like if you
Right.
publish something about liberty, 10 other people from liberty will respond and
Sure.
say, oh yeah, me too. So you've got to be careful to kind of like curate what you're posting, because otherwise it could just go down a rabbit hole.
Right. And I feel like there was probably two different ways of thinking through that part, where it's some people thought, oh my God, like everyone's getting screwed.
Yeah,
Or other people saying, well, you don't really know the whole story.
right.
What really happened here? How do you balance that? And also, you know, as the person looking at all of this stuff, what kind of conclusions do you draw?
I don't know. I mean, what the main conclusion I drew was that we need to put out, we need to do it like the finance guys do with a Google Doc of some kind, um, which we'll do for the next pay review or put it out at some point. And it's because the problem is a lot of people, I think, wanted to make very rash decisions. Like,
Right.
I'm getting screwed, I'm out of here. And then I think on the other end of the spectrum, there was a lot of managers that found out about it and were very defensive, and kept telling their staff, well, that doesn't mean anything. You don't know what city that person's in, and you don't know how much experience they have.
Sure.
And they're right, but I think a lot of times that excuse was just used across the board. Like, I don't have to give you any more money because we don't know anything about that data. There's no context. So I think if we can have a document that people fill out and say, I work in this city, I have this much experience, the quality of my reviews has been this, I do this line of business, I whatever, just kind of keep going through and try to narrow it down. So if you find out that somebody in your position is making a lot more money, you could start looking at the variables. I think that would help people. Otherwise, it's just hearsay, and people just get angry and can uproot their whole life without thinking about it. And I was the most worried about brand new people in the industry who might have been working for like 2 years,
Sure.
and they'd freak out and then run off and take another job that they're not ready for.
Well, and
Um,
that's it. Well, that's right. And one of the things that I think people would push back on is say, can you push it too hard? If there was always something about, you don't want to be one of those people who stays in a place for 2 years and then goes,
yeah,
and so how do you balance that?
I have to hope that people take the information and use it, because it's like you're going to go in the room with your boss and say, the hard market says that I'm being treated like I need more money. Like, I'm hoping that people take the information and it maybe inspires them to speak up. But ultimately, when you do speak up, you have to talk about your own accomplishments and think about what you've done and your value to a company. Um, and that's really all the information can provide. And there's a balance. Like, if you stay somewhere too long, I don't think your loyalty is rewarded. I think the company spends more money. All firms do this, by the way. They spend more money to hire new talent, which is infuriating. And they don't adjust
Right.
well enough the existing, staff that they have. But I also think if you jump around, you look like an,
Right.
so there's a balance to it, and you just have to kind of know. And you always know. You always know when it's time to go.
Right. What kind of, or was there any type of backlash from any of the whether it was carriers or brokers to some of the stuff that was posted?
It's all hearsay. It's all just, all I heard that so and so from Chubb was pissed at a dinner last night, and they're, telling their staff not to talk about their salaries, which is illegal, by the way.
Right.
And then I heard, yeah, I heard that there were some executives that were defensive about it, saying like, you don't even know if these people are telling the truth. You don't know the context of what city they live in. You don't, and that's what I was saying before about people being defensive.
Sure.
Because I think it's a little bit of both. I think the information lacked a lot of context, but I think it was very clear that people were very much underpaid, and especially those who had been loyal to the company for a while. Um, and so there was some negative backlash on that, but really not from any of the followers. A
Right.
few were like, "Can you get back to the memes?" I was like, I mean, yeah, but people seem to be into this, and I'm going to go with the flow on it.
So along those lines, is there stuff that you don't post? At this
Oh
point,
yeah,
you must, people are probably feeding you information. So
all day.
talk a little bit
Um,
about the filter that you use, if any.
okay, so, oh God, for the most part, it's not a filter. You just have to kind of curate the vibe a bit about what's being posted. Because if you post something, like let's say there's a company that's underpaying someone massively, like you'd get someone say, "Oh, I work at Locked In and I'm being paid this." Of course, remember, lacking context, whatever. And this is just an example. 15 other people disgruntled with their job would come at me and say, "Yeah, Locked In does this," and the next thing you know, you've spent half a day on Locked In, which isn't really fair. So you have to make sure that you spread out who's saying what about where they work. Because just as many people will come in and say, I'm treated extremely well by Locked In. I work for a wonderful producer. He treats me well, etc. So you got to make sure you kind of do both. Um, Also, if you post something that strikes a nerve emotionally, like don't let it go down a rabbit hole. There was some concern about, how women are paid, how maternity and parental leave is treated. Dab into it and then move on to the next thing, because otherwise it will veer off and become a whole different conversation, and that conversation is for a different Q&A. And so you kind of have to make sure you keep the train on the tracks, otherwise it could go off really quickly, and people get really mad when it kind of goes in a different direction. So you have to sort of remember the original question you were asking.
Do people try to settle? Do people have vendettas against other people and try to settle it through you?
um no, but maybe, I mean, I think people have very, everyone has something in insurance in their career that makes them really angry, or that they felt was an injustice to them. Might have been their
Right.
last job or their last boss. So they'll come with really, really like emotional information. My last boss told me I could, go for myself when I asked him for a raise.
Right.
Things like that. And you have to kind of ask, like, okay, really? Did it really go down like that? Like there was no nuance whatsoever. It was in front of, 200 people, he said this. So those are the ones that you sort of have to ask for more details, because it is, if it's too emotional, no one's going to believe it. It's so extreme. And you kind of have to be careful with that kind of information, because some of it's just like cartoonish. I've never
Sure.
seen some things happen in that way. So people will, I think, want to make their previous employer look bad, and they'll say, "Oh, this happened." And then there's been situations where, like, for example, 3 days ago we were doing that intern thing, the Q&A, and people were
Sure.
telling stories about the interns had done, and one of them was a story that I'm well familiar with. It was a guy at Aon, over in London, and a bathroom incident happened, a pipe burst, right? So I had heard about this story from the person who he worked for, but the version of the story that came through my inbox, the various versions were way different and were very, very extreme. And they varied from each other. And you remember, like people don't always tell you the exact truth.
Sure.
They tell you how they were told and how they were told. I mean, it's a gossipy industry.
Sure. Sure. Well, you know, one of the things you spend a bunch of time um, on the site is, the relationship building, what carriers shouldn't do, what brokers shouldn't do. One of the questions, that we were talking about is, broker entertainment. What do you
Oh my
find?
God.
what do you find is the best ways to entertain brokers?
I mean, as long as you involve alcohol, I think we're all pretty good. No, I mean, yeah, definitely alcohol. I think I love carriers that do unique things. There's one particular carrier that, you know, they would do things like a night at a dart bar where they would do like an escape room, or they did one where it was like a away day for an overnight thing, and it was like at a camp, like a summer camp type of place where it was like team building and climbing trees and zip lines and
Fun.
insane, totally grimy. Everyone was angry at first, and then by the end, everyone was drinking and talking about how much fun it was, and stuff like that. I found to be brilliant. I think ultimately everyone kind of leans back on golf, and that's fine because it's awesome. But not everybody golfs, and I think it's expensive, and it's the same thing over and over. A lot of women don't golf. Many do, many don't. A lot of young kids don't golf yet, so I don't know how well that is. I mean, I love it, but I think that there are other things to do.
Hmm.
I just love when people do creative stuff, and I'll never turn down a ski trip.
What are the what do you do if you're having success writing deals with someone, but perhaps you don't have great connections with them? It's going to be kind of awkward to go and spend a couple of hours with them. What
Yeah.
what are suggestions in terms of things that you should be doing?
Oh my god, like if your broker is shy or
Sure.
like awkward,
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's more like, I know a lot of companies do a good job of entertaining the younger brokers that they may not have a connection with yet.
Right.
Um, you know, it's like 14 years ago. I think it was Admiral did one in Los Angeles, and they took everybody to a movie theater and rented out one of the smaller theater rooms and got everyone drunk, gave them sushi, and then played Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And then I think everyone went to the bar afterwards. And it was brilliant because you don't have anything in common with anyone there, but everyone talked about the movie.
Right.
And it seemed like a weird thing to do because you're putting everyone in a movie theater, and so you're not talking to each other. But it was, I think it, and looking back on it, I was invited, so I must have been one of the awkward ones. But I think it was a way to do something with people that they didn't know very well.
Right. 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 So, hey, in a couple of months, we have the WSIA conference coming up, and
Oh,
there's the Plus conference, and it's kind of conference season.
oh.
What, what do you find to be kind of the key things that people should be thinking about as they as they go and show up at a conference? What are kind of one or two key takeaways that people should have?
Um, I don't know. I noticed when I was just starting in the industry, all I ever wanted to do was get invited to a conference. That's gonna be, that's how you know you made it. And then I noticed that everybody who was over the age of like 35 dreaded the conferences,
Right.
and now I dread them. And I understand why. I think it's as you meet more and more people in the industry, and you're actually working on deals that are important, it's just overwhelming. You know too many people. The meetings are important. They're not just like meet and greets, they're actually about substance. And you're up early and then you're out late, and there's too much drinking, and it's just a lot. And so you really have to curate to a very fine degree where you're going to spend your time. Don't do 7 a.m. meetings. You don't need to. It's not proving to your boss that you can get up early. At the same time, you also don't need to stay out very, very late. There's a balance. Maybe start your first meeting at 9 or 10, maybe 9, and then get home midnight, and then go crazy on the Tuesday night. So I mean, it's
So,
just being careful, drinking water.
you know, so the account, you're always putting stuff on the account. You have a day job. How do you manage to balance, or can you balance?
Yeah, it's I tend to do it while commuting or while traveling. Um, if you're working, in the day and if something's happening that's intense, you can't turn away from that. If people send stuff in the inbox, that's easy to just repost. But if you're in the middle of something, you can't really distract. I can't have my employer walk by and see me making a meme. You can't do that. So it tends to be whatever happened that day or that week. Um, if you notice, I only post like a meme on the permanent page like once a week,
Right.
whenever it occurs to me, and the rest of it is just sharing funny stuff in the stories, and that stuff is often sent to me by other people or shared. So I have a lot of help in that way. If people say, "Hey, my bonus and raise was this," all you have to do is repost it. That's easy. Or you get inspired by. The other day, Sampo sent a quote that was like 15 megs, and then they resent it and it was like 11 megs, and somebody compressed it and then it was 8. So I made a meme about how Sampo sends huge quote files. I mean, that takes 8 seconds to make that. I made it on the way home.
Do you have technology?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You got a meme generators.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
you have to find the image that you want to use, and then
Right.
from there you post over it. But I mean, once you learn to do it, you can barf them out in like 8 seconds.
Hey, so one of the questions that came in here was, and it's a pretty general question, any advice for women in the industry?
Um, it'd be the same as everybody else, I suppose. Ask for more money, demand it. Don't let don't let people get. Okay, there's a thing, and this is for everyone. There's a thing I noticed, and I don't know why this is legal, but I noticed when a manager does a pay review, they will tell you anything to get you out of the room because it's awkward. And so they're like, "Oh yeah, New Zealand property had a bad year, so we're really tightening the belt." It's like, what? And so that part I don't like, where the information you're being given is not honest, or they'll tell you, "Oh well, this is the best I can do. There's a big process, but hey, in a couple months we'll give you that raise." And I think that I don't know if it is more women don't demand more. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But it's the same for everybody. Like, absolutely, do not let yourself be strung along and demand better.
You know, one of the questions that also came in here, do you see the heavy drinking culture of insurance changing?
No, I mean, what was it? The Mothers Against Drunk Driving started because that guy in California was leaving an insurance event and crashed into a house.
I didn't know
I
that.
think it changed the way we Uber, and that changed the way we drive, and but insurance is just, I don't know. I mean, we've moved away from the very, very expensive black tie parties. I've seen that, but I think ultimately people just get drunk. I don't know why our industry is like that, but hey.
I mean, it has to be changing a little bit with remote working though, and just people not being as much together. And so there's just not as much of a, um,
I
you
mean,
don't need to be going out after work as much
you'd
as maybe
think,
we did.
yeah, you'd think. And so I think that toned down the drinking at work. But didn't COVID make everyone drink more? Everyone said that they drank. I think instead of drinking with each other, we just drank alone. I don't know.
Right.
Um, I
Well,
do think that there's less of, I don't know if they tell the truth, but when older people in the industry talk about the 80s, they make it sound like they were drinking martinis at 9 in the morning. And then you had 5 more drinks here, and then you did this there, and we came back to the office so drunk, and then we went
right.
home. I don't know
Right.
if that's an exaggeration or they really did. I think we're always going to be a boozy industry, but I'd like to think we're not blackout drunk every day.
Right. Hey, so for those listening, it's 2:25. So this is our 25 minutes. I'm going to keep it open for a little bit longer. We've got a couple of other questions. Feel free to to depart, and we've got another one next month with Ian Sawyer from AXA. But I am gonna keep going here and do a couple more questions. Thanks for those who need to jump off for 2:30. A couple of other questions here. What's the hardest part of staying anonymous? Any close calls?
Tons of close calls. When you piss someone off, it's a close call. People close to you will guess correctly. No, it's. I mean, I guess the only scary thing is just worrying that you're going to get, in trouble. But I mean, as it's grown and more people kind of know about it, I feel like it was scarier like when it was 4,000 followers, because that's just enough to be dangerous,
Right.
but not enough to kind of get called into some boardroom somewhere. But I think when you have enough followers and people know about it and people generally regard it as a positive thing, I worry about it less.
Right.
But you also have a bigger responsibility not to just, you have to make sure that what you're sharing isn't just a lie.
Right.
And you can't control that. People are going to tell you things and that's what it is. But I've posted stuff, for example, CV stars, their messaging about return to work was very murky. I don't think
Right.
they knew what they were going to do. And I don't know if they know what they're doing now. I don't know, but the information that came in was all over the place. And so at one point I said, oh yeah, they're making everybody come back 5 days a week. And then 5 people immediately got back to me and said, well, that's not the case for me. Like, I'm allowed to work remote in this area, or I can do this. So you just issue a correction and say, okay, we're still figuring this out. There's a little bit more of a responsibility not to just on companies and firms, because it's a big audience.
Right. All right. Well, now that I told people that we're going to be doing some of these questions, we got like 10 more here. So
Let's have them.
yeah. Okay. This is a fun one. Do you let anyone follow the account? My boss claims you declined a follow request.
I don't decline anyone. And I've heard this. I've heard there's a Reddit for insurance pros and there's Reddit for hard market. It's like dedicated to a couple people complain that they've been ousted by the hard market or that I declined them. And I have no idea what I don't think I've declined anyone.
The next couple we got are really around how long do you keep doing this? How concerned are you about being found out? What happens if you do? I think your answer is, I don't know, but go ahead.
I mean, at this point, it's big enough to where it's just a great adventure. And I think that there's been enough good that's come out of it. The baby formula thing and the pay review thing. Some people made some good life changes out of that. I don't know. I like to believe it was fun enough for a lot of people that if I get caught, I know that I did something good with that, with
Sure.
what it was.
Sure.
So I try not to worry too much about it. I mean, yeah, I don't want to get hauled into work and fired one day. I don't think that's going to happen. I hope that doesn't happen. And how long it goes on is however long people are into it. Nobody asked me to speak for them, so you have to be careful. You're not a voice for anyone. You just
Sure.
sort of share what's being shared with you and your bulletin board, and maybe make some jokes, and that's it. And it's kind of like Facebook that went out of fashion real fast.
Yeah.
And so if
Yeah.
the same thing happens to Instagram, I'm not doing a TikTok. So if Instagram goes out of fashion, we're done.
Right. What's your ultimate goal with the vision, with the power you've gained? You're the talk of the town, meaning everyone's watching and listening. What do you want to accomplish?
God, that's horrifying. First of all, that's the kind of thing I don't like to think about. But I would love more than anything, and if anyone knows people that can help me, I would love nothing more than to make like educational stuff that's fun for younger people. Like, I love the idea of doing like a guide to an ISO form or stuff like. I mean, still do what I'm doing, but like
Right.
Irma used to print, and now they do it online. But they used to print wonderful books about everything you want to know about additional insured, everything you want to know about construction, and people used to have these manuals in their offices, and you'd sneak in and read them, and that's how you learn. And I would love to kind of contribute to that. in a very fun way. But that, other than that, I have no long-term goals. I'm just going to ride the wave.
Right. So here's one. I don't think the person appreciated the entertainment area. Does Mr. Hard Market appreciate underwriting units have expense budgets and managing salaries is required to achieve desired results? Managers aren't given blank checks.
Of course. And that's one of the things about golf that is so insane. Like, companies spend a fortune, and I will say that the company that did the away day where it was like at a summer camp thing with the zip lining and whatever, that was very rural, very low budget. It was awesome, and I completely agree. I don't think you need to blow money on doing really high class stuff. I think there's so many ways to have fun. And if you're spending so much on T&E that it is taking away from benefits and salaries, then figure out, be more creative with how you spend that money. Absolutely. But also make sure that there's Tito's.
This is a good one.
Okay.
Why do people assume the hard market is a man?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Hey, really appreciate the time. Thanks
Sure.
for joining us.